Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. I want to ask you a question. What if one individual property owner owned 5% of the state of Utah? Would you be alarmed? What about if it was 25%? Well, let's try 67%. That is how much of the land within the boundaries of our state is owned by the federal government. Well, this isn't all bad. We've had use and access to that land ever since we've been a state. Mining has taken place, there's been forestry, there's been recreation, there's been grazing. It's all happened on this land. But in the last decade, policies are starting to change, and access to that land is being severely curtailed. And it's causing problems, so much so that a bill was passed requiring or stating that the federal government is obligated to release their lands to the state of Utah as they promised when our Constitution was adopted and approved by the federal government. Additionally, groups and organizations are now coming together, one called the American Lands Council, which is trying to push the issue of state and local government sovereignty. We will be talking to some of the members of that council, Representative Ken Ivory and Commissioner Bruce Clegg, later on in the show. But right now we want to take a moment to talk about what happens when there is a conflict between management from the federal government and a local government, where the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of a town come into play when the government restricts access to their water. From Tombstone, Arizona, here's Terry Wood.
Water's a scarcity in the desert to start with, but now you have to be conscious every time you turn that tap, because we have 2 days water supply in that reservoir.
Nancy Sosa is the archivist for the city of Tombstone, Arizona. She understands the importance of water in the desert because she knows the history of water in a town that is burnt to the ground twice during its 130 years.
1880 is when it started. There's no water where the city is located on the flat. And they had all these people, hundreds of people coming every day to the city, pulling the silver out of there that made the country. They needed to find water, and they found it here in the Huachucas. And the idea actually came from Major Whitside at Camp Huachuca. He said, pipe it from the Huachuca Mountains across the San Pedro Valley to a reservoir at the city, and you'll have your water.
131 years of water flowing to the city from springs 30 miles away. But today, the city is operating off temporary repairs made to their pipeline and standing by, hoping that those repairs will hold during the rainy monsoon season. In 2011, a forest fire swept across the mountainside where the springs originate. That led to massive mud and landslides that cut off the city of Tombstone's water supply. City officials were anxious to get that water restored to residents, but they ran into some unexpected problems when they tried to access their springs and the pipeline that runs down from the Huachuca Mountains to Tombstone's reservoir.
This year when I started this project, things seemed to be going pretty good. I had a pretty good rapport, I thought, with the Forest Service people, and then all of a sudden, communications almost stopped. And the communications that we did receive were basically telling us that they were not recognizing our land ownership and our rights to the water.
In July, I attempted to get the necessary permits to bring mechanized equipment onto the road, and the Forest Service began their questioning of, do you even own it? The city decided to use the road anyway. We needed to fix the line. We needed to get the temporary repairs done. And in that, one of those attempts to use the road, the Forest Service law enforcement officials stopped the mayor and the workers.
And they showed up in force. They came out with their law enforcement people, armed, in a large group, and basically told me that if I didn't remove and cease what I was doing, that we were going to be arrested and our equipment was going to be seized as evidence.
I decided right then that we needed to have a meeting with them, and we went down and met with them. I didn't mind them putting me in jail. That's not a big thing. I could use the rest. But the big thing was that they were going to theoretically impound equipment. Well, we didn't own it, and the city couldn't afford it.
Miller Canyon is where 6 of the main producing springs are located. It's within the borders of the Miller Peak Wilderness Area that was designated in 1984. That area is also within the Protected Activity Center for the Mexican spotted owl. The Forest Service replied to our questions about the complaints from Tombstone. They said they have been working with the city on an expedited timeline and that the city has completed all requested work that has been permitted. The Forest Service also explained that they are carrying out their role as land managers to protect the wilderness character of the area. That includes limiting the use of motorized and mechanized equipment to the minimum required tool for the job, as determined by the Forest Service. In other words, if a shovel is all you need to get the job done, that's the tool you'll be allowed to use. That's why the city has been required by the Forest Service to file special permits to use mechanized and motorized equipment in the wilderness area, along with other necessary permits to gain access to the springs in the canyon. After working through the permits with the Forest Service, the city of Tombstone was granted permission to use some motorized equipment in the wilderness until March 1st because of the Mexican spotted owl. According to letters to Tombstone from the Forest Service, there is more to consider in the permitting of Tombstone's project than wilderness.
There are strict guidelines and permits required through the Forest Service, and the National Environmental Protection Agency gets involved, Fish and Wildlife gets involved, environmental studies that have to be finished, according to them. This is our property, and we really would like to just go up there and fix it the way it needs to be fixed right now.
City officials feel that they are being held up by bureaucratic red tape. They're concerned that the delays could add years to the project.
Something that could have easily been done in a mere few weeks has turned into a whole year, and we barely have 3 springs temporarily repaired.
I think if I was to take the time, even during this emergency, and fill out the paperwork and wait for the studies to be completed and for them to come back with what they feel is the required equipment, then we could probably go in and start doing some of the work. But that's where the problem is that they want to dictate through this decision memo what we take in there as legitimate equipment.
There shouldn't be a fight. There should be no fight. You know, we're talking about property that we have had since the late 1800s, and the Forest Service wasn't established, and those residences weren't established till many years after. So we're fighting a fight that we shouldn't even have to be dealing with. You know, it's a public utility, and we are a small town, yes, but we are a town nonetheless, and we deserve to have our water just like anybody else.
The city of Tombstone has taken the Forest Service to court to settle the issue of their ownership of the 24 springs that feed the town and gain unfettered access to repair and maintain the pipeline. On June 8th and 9th of this year, a partial solution was found. About 100 people joined in the Tombstone Shovel Brigade and made temporary repairs to the pipeline with hand tools. For now, the city of Tombstone is keeping a close eye on its pipeline in hopes that this year's floods won't wash away all the hard work that has been done to keep it flowing as they wait for the courts to determine ownership so permanent repairs can be made. Links to letters from the Forest Service and other information can be found on our website, thecountyseat.tv. For the County Seat, I'm Terry Wood.
Thank you so very much, Terry, for that report on Tombstone. Leads us to our next topic about states exerting rights over federal government. And there's a new movement afoot. We will find out about the American Lands Council in a panel discussion when we return here on the County Seat. Stay with us.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration. SITLA manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of furthering the education of Utah students while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, we distributed more than $22 million to Utah schools last year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure? It's all about knowing where to look. Make plans now to be a part of the best small town fair in Utah, in Delta, Utah. August 2nd through the 4th, honoring our servicemen and women, Millard County's agricultural heritage is highlighted and its residents' accomplishments celebrated during the county fair.
If you ever dreamt of running through an old west town, searching for outlaws, hiding behind the stable, or inside the old church with your 6-shooter by your side, well, your dreams have come true. Castlegate Town Shooting Range, is the most detailed, most realistic, and outright most fun shooting range you've ever seen. The North Springs Shooting Range.
There's no need to travel far to find that perfect family adventure. August 11th, there's the big demolition derby that wraps up our county fair. Juab County. It'll change your family forever.